Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to On Deck. Welcome back to On Deck. I'm Andrew Fry. That's Jason Chase, Ryan Watson, and Alex Dorfler. The World Series has just ended. The Astros took it in 6. And man, guys, some major headlines. Jason, we're going to start with you. Look, we'll start with Game 1.
That's a great place to start.
That's right, because chronologically, right? It makes sense.
Yes, of course.
The Phillies come back from 5-0, and they take the game 6-5. What an amazing game!
Yeah, pretty impressive. I mean, when you saw Kyle Tucker hit those 2 home runs, you didn't think that they'd be able to come back. But they're called the Fighting Phils for a reason. They fought back.
That's right, Ryan.
Yeah, I think it was a big statement win for the Phillies. A team which came in with you're talking about a huge win disparity, the second biggest I want to say in World Series history going into this game. I think you go back to the White Sox and the Cubs from World Series way back yonder. That had a much larger gap, but I think the Phillies major underdogs coming in, and I think they showed that again a big statement win that they were here to play, and that was a big marquee moment for them coming back 6-5 against the Astros in Game 1.
I mean, Phillies, they're known for coming back throughout the years, fighting Phillies. Taking one at home, I think that was really important for them to do. Gave them a lot of hope to start off. Exciting game, brought it to extra innings. Castellanos, great defense. Terrible defender the whole year, but just showed up in the postseason, really locked in.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest headlines, I think, from that game. Nick Castellanos, who had to play right field for the Phillies ever since Bryce Harper hurt himself. And they signed Castellanos as more of a DH guy, but he has to go out and play defense. He makes the biggest play probably of his life in Game 1 in right field of the World Series. A game-saving catch. He's coming in on it, made a sliding catch to save the game and send it to extras, where the Phillies would score 1 run in the top of the 10th off of, I think it was Yimi Garcia, if I have that right. It was either him or Stanek in the top of the 10th inning there. And just really a statement win for the Phils. Everybody going in had the Astros winning in 4. And the Phillies came in beating the Astros 6-5 and really proving that Justin Verlander, or I guess they were continuing that trend. We saw Justin Verlander get his first World Series win this year, and he's made a World Series start in each of the past 3 decades. That's crazy, right?
I mean, truly incredible. He's played for a lot of great teams, and he's been a really good pitcher, arguably the best pitcher of this generation. And for him to, be so bad in the World Series, it's odd. Because the rest of the postseason, he's pretty all right. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, he was more than just all right. He's going to win the Cy Young Award this year.
At 39.
At 39, he arguably had one of the best seasons of his career.
Still pumping high 90s, hitting 99 a couple times this year. I mean,
it's pretty impressive.
He did.
Yeah.
And what you saw throughout the regular season, I'm a Mariners fan, so I watched these games. Throughout the regular season, whenever Verlander would get in trouble, I mean, his average velocity is like 94, 95. But when he gets in trouble, he dials it up there 98, 99 miles an hour.
Pumps it up.
I mean, it's crazy, a guy at 39 years old. I mean, it's him and Max Scherzer doing this, basically.
Yeah.
And I think those guys both are probably, first ballot Hall of Famers?
Easily.
Most definitely.
You think, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing the end of really a great generation of pitchers now in Scherzer and in Verlander. I mean, they're not going to be around too much longer, which is just unfortunate.
I think they got a couple more seasons.
A few more.
Yeah,
and Verlander is probably going to get a contract, but that's going to be saved for a future episode.
I think you can throw Kershaw into that conversation, too.
Oh,
yeah,
I think Kershaw.
Well, I think it's interesting you guys mentioned that, but it's like, what's interesting to me is why do you guys think that Verlander has maybe struggled so much within the postseason, especially because I think also, too, there was a stat that they brought up that he's given up the most home runs in postseason play as well. So what do you think has maybe not gone so well within the postseason that he hasn't, within the regular season he's been dominant. We've seen that time and time again. But what do you think it's been about the postseason that he hasn't been quite able to translate into the postseason from the regular season?
That's a good question. I think maybe it's just the hitters locking in, dialing in more. Postseason baseball is completely different from regular season. Just maybe tipping his pitches a little bit.
I mean, it straight up could also be the bright lights. I mean,
Yeah.
Philadelphia had a very clear home field advantage when they were at home. That stadium was bumping. I mean, it registered on the seismograph at the college nearby. That's how crazy it was. And interestingly enough, he lost this game here, but he will win at home. So that's kind of interesting to me. So maybe he likes home better.
But
Game one was at home.
You're right.
Yeah, he lost at home, and then
He did.
won Game 5 at. Wait.
He won on the road. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But
But
Who
the
knows?
game on the road, he still didn't even do that good. Game 5, like
Yeah, only
Schwarber
went 5
leadoff home
innings.
run.
But we'll get
Yeah,
there in a
but-
second. Let's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
get ahead of
But
ourselves.
jumping the gun a little
also,
bit.
one other thing I'd like to say about Game 1, Aledmus Diaz leaning into that pitch
Oh my
in the
goodness.
bottom of the 10th. I mean, I don't think that's really cool. I think it's kind of pathetic. They needed a hit to win the game, and he's pretty much just like saying, oh, I don't want to do it, pass it to the next man. I don't think that's the mindset a professional baseball player should have. Considering baseball, the game can switch in with one pitch.
That's right. That's exactly right. And if you remember in that situation, the Astros had the winning run on second base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had first base open. They don't need another base runner in that
No, they
situation.
needed a hit.
need a knock with one out too. And so he comes in, or maybe it was with 2 outs. I don't
It was with
actually
2
remember.
outs.
Or maybe it was with 2 outs. So he comes in on a 2-0 pitch, tries to get hit. Then he takes 3-0. Or no, I think he swung away 3-0 and then
He
took the
swung,
3-1.
yeah.
So really, and John Boy did a video about this.
Yeah,
that's right.
But just a really wild sequence of events
Yeah.
there from Aledmus Diaz. But back to Verlander, we also have to remember that he leads all pitchers all time in postseason strikeouts. If I have that number right, it was him and Clayton Kershaw who were
And
up
he-
there battling
yeah,
for
he
first.
passed Kershaw.
And he passed Kershaw. That's right. So it's probably the home run ball that's gotten him. If you look in his World Series career over the years, because obviously he's a dominant pitcher. He's a dominant postseason pitcher. He leads everybody all time in strikeouts. And when you get stung by the long ball, it hurts. You know, you just give up a couple bad pitches a game, and there's a couple runs on the board right there. We'll move to Game 2.
I'm actually going to disagree with you a bit about Verlander being so dominant here. I would argue the reason why he has so many postseason strikeouts is because he's been there so much and he's been in the league for a long time.
That's all fair and good, but you think about other pitchers who had extensive postseason careers, like some of the guys in the Big Red Machine. Bob Gibson comes to mind. Why isn't he up there? He was one of the most dominant pitchers of all time. But Verlander, he's there at the top of the list.
That's fair.
You know, so it's interesting. We'd have to look at the numbers a little bit more and things like that. But we move to Game 2. The Astros take this one 5-2 behind a very strong start by Framber Valdez, who will receive some Cy Young Award votes, even though he's not really the most household of names. The Phillies started Zach Wheeler. He got kind of touched up early, and their bullpen held him in place, but the offense couldn't do enough against Framber Valdez, who's just a ground ball specialist. Alex, we'll start with you in Game 2. A couple of key takeaways.
Yeah, Framber Valdez, his curveball was on point,
Yeah.
dropping feet. And then Philly's just swinging through his fastball. In the 6th inning, I know there was pressure on, I think 2 runners, and then just got a double play ball, just pitching how he's always pitched. Yeah.
That's right, keeping the ball on the ground.
Keeping the ball on the ground.
Which is huge in the World Series.
We've seen this a little bit throughout the postseason, but you know there's been a lot of clips of Valdez reaching for his right hand, potentially for sticky stuff.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's cheating, but I'm saying that did happen.
I saw he got checked a couple times.
He did.
Like,
They get
in
checked
there.
every single inning.
Yeah.
We saw this earlier with the Padres and Joe Musgrove, and I feel like this is something to watch that kind of happen throughout the entire postseason.
I mean, we know the Astros love to cheat.
They have a history.
They do have a history.
They have a
of it.
history.
Well, we have to, I think, understand too that the game has been changing a little bit too. There's a bit more tolerance, I think, nowadays for some of this to be used. It kind of depends on where the MLB leans in terms of that stuff. There's the argument of, oh, well, it makes pitching easier for pitchers, but at the same time, velocity is increasing, and then the risk of getting hurt with a triple-digit fastball obviously increases that much as well. And so it's going to be kind of interesting to see kind of how that shifts. But I guess it'll be one of those questions that will be left unanswered until further notice. So, but I think you bring up a good point there with Valdez for sure.
I mean, with like sticky stuff and like substances like that, it increases spin rate as well, which makes your breaking stuff a bit better. So you could also get hurt by a breaking ball. I mean, it's not a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but it's still 80, sometimes 90, depending who's pitching. That can certainly hurt someone. And yes, you do get control over it, but you also get more bite.
So there's those pros and cons. There you go.
That's right. We'll move to Game 3, which was actually postponed a day. This was the first World Series game in Philadelphia since, I believe, 2009, or maybe it was 2008. It's been a long time for the Philly fans, and that was one of the biggest things going into Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia was the fans. How are the Astros going to take the fans out of the game? They couldn't do it. Early on, Philadelphia had 4 runs before the second inning was over. Ryan, Game 3, crazy. Ranger Suarez, people were saying when Game 3 got postponed, this helps the Phillies because now they can throw Ranger Suarez because their starting rotation isn't great. But people were talking about Ranger Suarez like he's the next Sandy Koufax. And the thing is, Ranger Suarez, on the face of it, is not Sandy Koufax. But going into Game 3, guess what? He was.
Well, he looked really good. Again, 5 strong innings, only 3 hits, no runs surrendered, and 4 strikeouts along with surrendering a walk. Up there with, I think, Valdez. Not exactly quite a household name up there, but, it was a breath of fresh air, I think, for the Phillies, because I think a big thing for them going into this World Series was they're going to have to follow a blueprint very similar to the Nationals in their World Series, where you have your first couple of pitches in Nola and Wheeler, which are going to be kind of your standouts, and what's kind of a bit of a thinner lineup once you kind of move a bit further down the line. And so a lot of the onus was going to be on those guys to get it done, but giving up back-to-back 5-run games didn't exactly go so well for them. And so seeing Suarez perform the way that he did in that one was great to see if you're a Phillies fan, and it paid off in the best way possible. I think the bigger thing going off of that is how the Phillies offense just came out of nowhere, and that really kind of fueled that. That, I think, was the big surprise for me going into this one. I think they got all 7 of their runs on 5 separate home runs. So just the long bomb was their friend in that one for sure. But we'll go back to we'll get to that in just a minute. But I think with the pitching that Suarez had in this one, again, just really a breath of fresh air and a spot in which it really wasn't expected all that much, but I think was a sight for sore eyes for Phillies fans.
Absolutely. You talk about the home runs. Harper hit 1, Bohm hit 1, Marsh hit 1, Schwarber hit 1, and then Hoskins hit 1. And actually, there was a bet that I saw placed in a sportsbook somewhere. You see this?
I saw it.
This guy bet on all 5 of those guys to hit a homer. He won like $75,000 or something like that.
It's crazy.
Alex, we'll go over to you next. Game 3, McCullers really not great. He had a 9+ ERA in the championship series and then the World Series. There was some talk about he was tipping his pitches.
Yeah, that's
did you
Harper.
see anything like that?
After he hit that first home run, called Alec Bohm over, told him his little secret. After Bohm hit his home run, the reporter asked him, like, what did Harper say? He said, it's between us two. So that indicates they figured something out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw something. It's like McCullers was lifting up his knee higher during when you throw off speed, and then also he'd raise his glove during fastballs. And if you're a Phillies fan and already won 1 away, it was looking really good for you guys there, and I feel bad that it did the way it did, but.
We should mention the score. The Phillies won this one 7-0 on those 5 home runs. You watched this game.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, the starting pitching sets the tone for the entire game. Ranger Suarez shoved. McCullers really did not. I mean, honestly, it kind of felt like the game was over from Schwarber's leadoff home run. I mean, legitimately speaking, that's, especially with how loud that crowd was the entire time, that's hard. That's real hard.
Yeah, it was. And Schwarber, we do want to correct this real quick.
Was that Harper that had
Harper.
Okay.
Harper's
I wanted to
first
make
inning
sure.
home
My
run.
bad.
But you were close. I mean, Kyle Schwarber hits home runs all the time, so you can be forgiven.
In the Game 2, wanted to say this, but his 2 back-to-back home runs that should have both been home runs, but the foul ball.
Was that a foul ball?
It was a foul ball,
Okay.
and I don't know why the umpire thought it wasn't. Gave Phillies fans hope, but and then the next pitch got one robbed. That sucks.
That hurts.
It does hurt.
You're not kidding about that. Game 4. This was the no-hitter game. The second ever no-hitter thrown in a World Series. The first was Don Larson's 1954 perfect game. We should mention real quick, the Astros did end up winning the series in 6 games. Evan Charney, our wonderful director, did have that. But Game 4, Astros win 5-0 behind a combined no-hitter. Christian Javier threw 6 no-hit innings and then handed it over to Brian Abreu, Rafael Montero, former Mariner, and Ryan Presley, one of the highest paid relievers in the game. This was a fun one to watch, Jason.
I mean, yeah. I mean, me personally, I love a good pitching duel. And to see Christian Javier go out there and shove the way that he did, that was really fun to watch. I mean, we haven't seen something like that in a very long time, as you said previously.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think this is a testament to how deep the Astros pitching really goes, both within the starting lineup and within the bullpen. And to see Javier, pitch as well as he did, you're talking 6 innings, no hits, no runs, only surrendered 2 walks, and a whopping 9 strikeouts in that. Just a stellar performance from him. And then just to pass that off to a slew of great relievers that the Astros already have lined up waiting for them, especially with Presley to finish it off. It just goes to show that the Astros really have nothing to worry about too much from a pitching standpoint. It's just a matter of being able to dominate on that set of things and just allowing the offense to kind of relax and settle in and be able to flourish on the other end of things. And all it took was 1 inning for them to put 5 up on the board, and that's all she wrote for them.
Yeah, Javier threw 97 pitches, 63 of them were strikes, and I think upwards of 70 of them were fastballs. He struck the Phillies hitters out and kept them off balance using predominantly just a fastball. Now, when you get no hit in the World Series, especially in Game 4, to tie the series at 2-2, especially after a statement win the night before, I don't think many Phillies fans were feeling like, okay, that's all right, we got these guys, right? Nobody was feeling like that. I think at that point that series was over. Alex, do you share my feeling?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think after the no-no, it's hard to come back for that. And in the next game, Noah Syndergaard starting. It was anticipated to be a bullpen game. Astros scheduled Verlander. Verlander's one of the GOATs, I'd say. And, hope definitely diminished after that.
Right. In Game 5, the pitching matchup, and the series is tied at this point, 2-2 after, like we just said, a no-hitter from Christian Javier and company. In Game 5, the Astros beat the Phillies 3-2 to take a 3-2 series lead. This was Noah Syndergaard and the Phillies bullpen versus Justin Verlander, who had not gotten a World Series win to this point, so there are a few question marks around this game. But against Verlander and then a pretty much rested Houston bullpen. Alex, we'll go to you first on this one. Was there any hope for the Phillies going into this game to win? I know they had Justin Verlander had won a game, but you had to think he would come around at some point.
I think the biggest hope was them wearing their baby blue throwback jerseys.
Those are cool.
Those are cool. Yep. I think they hyped up the fans. They were, I don't know, but started off the game. Noah Syndergaard gave up a double that Altuve stretched to a triple, or made it to third, and then Pena hit him in, and then, yeah. Just
rest is history.
Yeah.
Right? Jason?
You're going to hear Pena quite a bit in these games. He ended up winning World Series MVP. And also, I don't think the Phillies were put in that bad of a position. Justin Verlander has had his struggles. And the Phillies have used these bullpen-type games in the entire postseason. And they've won every single game. So I honestly think that at home, the crowd is going wild. I think the Phillies kind of like their chances.
And what do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think there's true. You do kind of have that home field advantage. Obviously, Citizens Bank Park, it's got the best winning percentage in postseason history at just over 700 going into that game. So obviously, it wasn't like the stats weren't in favor of Philly going into this one, at least at least in terms of home field advantage. But I think really what this game proved is that there were so many issues for the Phillies, especially in terms of their inability to hit with runners in scoring position. It had been a big problem for them going into this one, and this was a great showcase to kind of highlight that particular issue. They had so many chances to kind of bring in runners home, and it was such a tightly contested game. You needed everything that you could get, and it just didn't quite go their way in a game which really would have been a big momentum shifter, especially for them having, with what happened in Game 4 to try to turn that around going into Game 5, but they couldn't quite get it going. And I think, again, along with that, it goes to, that lack of solid starting pitchers. They had to go through 6 pitchers throughout the course of this game, and that can kind of stretch you a little bit in bits and pieces. But, again, Syndergaard not having a very deep start to this game, getting pulled pretty early in, just kind of proved some of the places that the Phillies will have to fill in the offseason.
That's right. Yeah, a deeper starting rotation. I think Syndergaard's – I think Rob Thompson would have been thrilled if Syndergaard would have gone one time through the order because Syndergaard has been stretched out, but they've also used him in the bullpen, or they did anyway, down the stretch of that season. They acquired him from the Angels, of course. And that starting pitching depth really did kill him, and especially that batting average too, because when your whole team, or I guess your best hitters, are focused on fly ball or die, it's a recipe for hitting home runs, and that's great. But when you're facing guys like Justin Verlander and Framber Valdez who know how to not give up home runs and to keep you on the ground, it's not a great recipe for success. And I think that's what a lot of people were thinking going into this series.
This Phillies offense really did feel like home run or bust. Like,
Yeah.
they have had some really flashy home runs, don't get me wrong, and that's nice and all. But you simply got to hit with runners in scoring position, and they couldn't really do that very well at all.
That's right. And speaking of flashy home runs, we go to Game 6. Yordan Alvarez. The Phillies fans, all I'll say from a Mariners fan's point of view, Philly fans know the pain of Yordan, a.k.a. Your Daddy Alvarez, because this guy hits monster tanks, and he lets you know about it. The Astros win 4-1 in Game 6. They win the series 4-2. And the only scoring in this game was done in the 6th inning. Yordan Alvarez 3-run Jimmy Jack to put the Astros up 3-1 at that point. And then a couple batters later, I think Alex Bregman was hit in for the 4th run, and the Astros won 4-1. Ryan, that's one of the greatest postseason home runs I think we've seen in probably a few years now, ever since Rajai Davis in 2016. That's the other one that comes to mind.
Oh, yeah, it makes me think of that, and just the insane crowd reaction when you go back to that Davis home run in that World Series is just electrifying. And I think Alvarez captured that once again here in Game 6, but that was a big turning point. I think a big thing to remember is that you got to remember this Houston lineup's got some power hitters in them for sure, and it didn't really show up in a lot of those earlier games in the series, but this was the one where it mattered the most, and Alvarez came out in the clutch, did what he does best. He just gave it a good hack and watched it fly right over the batter's eye, and so that was all there was for Philly in that one. But again, you sometimes you forget about that, and then right here in Game 6, it came back to bite the Phillies.
And can we talk about that for a second? Yordan hit this ball when you say in Little League, I'm going to take you 450 dead center, right? Yordan hit it over the batter's eye, 450 feet. No one's supposed to hit it there.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think Wheeler should have been pulled at that
Really?
point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something
Okay.
I heard he didn't even think. It was a surprise to him that he got pulled. He was only at 70 pitches, still didn't give up a run or anything, pitching good, but just got a couple runners on. But at that point when he got pulled, they still had a lead. Schwarber, he hit that home run, Schwarbomb, the last one of his postseason. But yeah.
But that's an interesting thing because Zach Wheeler, yes, it's true, he only had 70 pitches, but the Phillies need to win this game. They have to. It is a win or go home game, obviously, because it's Game 6 and they're down in the series. I think going to Alvarado, who had been showing signs of fatigue, sure. But when you're throwing 99-mile-an-hour gas, lefty on lefty, and Alvarado throws across his body, that is a tough pitcher to pick up from the left-handed side. I think on paper it was the right move. I think on paper to bring in Robbie Ray in the division series was the right move. But both times it didn't pay off to the same hitter.
I don't know if it was the right move. Rob Thompson, the first time being a head coach after Joe Girardi got fired. I mean, I think that's just a rookie coaching mistake
Really?
to take
Do you
out
think
Wheeler.
so?
Yeah, definitely.
Look, Rob Thompson had been managing his bullpen just aggressively all season long. When his starter showed any signs of trouble, he went to the pen. That was his consistent characteristic throughout the entire playoffs, and it had been working. I don't blame him one bit.
You know what it reminded me a lot of when Wheeler got pulled? 2020, Blake Snell, he gets pulled, gives up the homer.
But that's a little different. Because
How is it different?
Because Kevin Cash and the Rays managed exclusively on sabermetrics. That's why.
Okay.
And Blake Snell had no reason to come out of the game other than Mookie Betts was coming up to the plate, and that would have been the 3rd time through the order. Or maybe it was the 4th time. I think it was the 3rd time. And Blake Snell's stats against teams 3 times through the order, and the Dodgers stats against pitchers 3 times through the order were really good. But to take out Wheeler, for Alvarado, you get the lefty on lefty, right? And Wheeler's a righty, so he'd be throwing, into Yordan's bat, presumably.
Yeah, to Yordan.
To Yordan. I mean, this is Yordan, and he had been struggling. I mean, that is very all well and good. But still, on paper, the matchup, I think this was a smarter decision because Snell was dealing. Wheeler was pitching fine. He was pretty good in the 6th inning with no runs in the World Series. That's a good outing, okay? But when you're getting into trouble and you're losing your command and you're allowing 2 runners on, and you've been managing the same way throughout the postseason, it makes sense why he went to Alvarado.
I would argue that Wheeler is an absolute workhorse. You look at his innings the past couple of years, he's worked super deep into
He's
games.
always over 200 innings.
Yeah, super impressive. And he has great stuff, and you're paying him that big money for a reason to go out and give you these innings. And also something that has changed this postseason as compared to other postseasons is that starters have been going deeper into games. Before you saw bullpen games almost every game, especially with the Rays, and you saw openers, like teams trying to be crafty. But I would argue just let your ace go out there and work. And I think that the Phillies paid for it.
Well, and that's also true, but Dusty Baker got grilled when he left McCullers out there to give up 7 runs or 5 runs or however many it was. Ryan, why don't you settle this debate?
Zach Wheeler didn't do bad.
He didn't.
He
I
wasn't
agree,
doing
but
bad.
Dusty Baker
he
got
should've
grilled
stayed
for leaving his starter in there.
McCullers is getting teed off like it's that one
was
Bugs
batting
Bunny
practice.
meme. You know the one I'm talking about? They just hit home runs, they jog around the bases?
Ryan, can you settle this debate for
Well,
us?
you know, here's the thing. Like in any sport, you'll make decisions, some work and some don't. But, you know, I think I got to go with Jason on this one because it's, you know, you've already paid Wheeler that much money, but it shows that you have faith in your pitching staff, right? You have faith in the 2 guys that everyone's saying are supposed to be leading this team from a starting pitcher's position, and to let him go out there and do what he needs to do. And he was doing better. He was at a much better start than he was in his last outing, but I think it shows faith in him. But I do understand a lot of the metrics there, but I think it shows loyalty to a team in that moment to be like, yes, we're going to have faith in you in this moment. We're putting it on the line. We're giving the ball to you. What are you going to do with it? We're giving you the opportunity. See if you can go and run with it.
That's fair. I do agree with what you guys are saying. I do understand what you're saying, obviously. But it really is a toss-up for me, whether you go to Alvarado, who throws 99 from across his body from the same side, or you stick with Wheeler, who had been dealing, is a workhorse. You guys are exactly right in that. But who was getting into a little bit of trouble with the Astros' biggest bat coming up.
But you're wrong.
Okay. No.
Well,
What happened?
should have kept him
What
in.
happened?
Well,
They
we
took him out, he gave
we
up
don't
a
know what
3-run
Wheeler would
shot.
have done, right? We don't know what Paul
I mean,
Sewald would have done in the same situation
Is
against Jordan.
it worse
we
than
don't
giving
know
up a swamp donkey to Jordan Alvarez?
We don't know
I
what
don't
Wheeler
think-
would have done.
I don't think it can be worse than giving up the homer there.
We don't know. We don't know if he would have given up the home run or not. We
Well, I
don't
mean,
know.
here's the
Can't be
thing.
worse.
Here's the thing with all that. It goes back to again the starting pitching issues of just like, well, what happens if you have a deeper rotation? Do you even get into this kind of situation to begin with? And so you you begin to asking questions like that. And so if the Phillies, who already have a hot batting lineup and just need to work on with runners in scoring position, if they can try to get that rotation a little bit deeper, maybe if they want to make another postseason run, should they find themselves in that position again, maybe they won't see themselves in quite an issue this time around. So it's another one of those what ifs.
That's right. Yes, and you know, depending on what you want to say, should he have gone to the reliever? Should he have not? It's all done now. The Astros win the series. The Phillies go home, and this was the largest difference in games, regular season wins, I think, maybe ever. I'm not sure the exact stat on that.
Second most.
Second
I want
most
to say.
ever.
It's 19. It was 19, right?
It was 19. The Phillies
yeah.
won like 87. The Astros won something like
106, I wanna say.
It took Astros a late season push to make it even to the wild card spot.
The Phillies.
Yeah, the Phillies. I said Astros. Meant Phillies.
Yeah, it did. And they were struggling. They almost were going to get beaten out by the Brewers, who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Yeah.
I mean, all season.
I mean, I think for the future, it shows teams that they should always fight for that last wild card
Yeah.
spot. You see so many teams today tank. The Orioles somewhat did that. They traded away Mancini. They traded away.
It was terrible in the postseason. By the way.
Okay,
But
well,
he ended
yes,
up making
but
that
like-
play in when he came in after Gurriel.
Right down the first base.
Yeah,
line.
Yeah, right
he
down
did
the
make
first
that play.
baseline. That was a great play.
But I mean, they trade away some of
was
their
heartbreaking.
relievers as well. I mean, what if they bought instead? I mean, the Phillies have shown the world that you should always go for it if you can. You
Yeah.
shouldn't rebuild
All
and you
these
shouldn't
teams
tank.
should.
And overall, it's just better for the sport. There were so many
The
teams.
lockdown was because teams are tanking.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
There shouldn't be teams like the Diamondbacks.
No
and
one wants to watch
the
an A's game.
Yeah. No
Why,
one.
why would you want to go to an A's game?
To watch. I'm from San Francisco, Bay Area. Only reason why I've been to the A's games in the last couple of years was because like Garrett Cole was coming to pitch or someone
You're there for the other team.
for
not
the other
your own.
team. Yeah, not for the A's.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
then you go
A's.
pee in a horse stall.
Yeah. And eat an overpriced hot dog.
I thought the Coliseum didn't even have concessions. I thought you had to get it all from outside.
They won't let you bring in outside food. though.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
The one stadium.
Regardless, now we do have to talk about the World Series MVP, and we are running out of time. So quickly, Javier Pena really had a monstrous.
Jeremy.
What did I say?
Sorry.
Javier?
Javier.
Yeah,
got me.
sorry. Jeremy Pena. Sorry. Jeremy Pena had a monstrous postseason and a monstrous World Series.
Yeah.
Now, as a Mariner fan, I obviously think Julio is the best rookie in the league this year. But does this postseason performance overshadow Julio Rodriguez? And again, I'm talking as a Mariners fan, but do you guys think that Jeremy Pena was actually the best rookie in the league this year?
No, I don't think it does. What Julio Rodriguez did was absolutely incredible. He played great defense. He hit well. He stole bases. He did everything right. He's going to be a very bright star, and you're not going to see anything different in the AL Rookie of the Year voting.
I hope not.
But Pena definitely is the future, or a big part of the future of the Astros. I know a lot of those guys on this team are like only 25 years old. Jordan, Christian Javier. Pena's younger than that.
Pena's 25.
Pena's
too.
25
Yeah.
also. He's one of them. There are a couple others.
And Urquidy is 28, and
Bregman's
25.
28.
Bregman's
No?
28.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's been in the league for a long time.
Jordan's very young.
Jordan is 25.
Kyle
yeah.
Tucker?
Kyle Tucker's
Kyle Tucker's very young.
25.
25.
Look, the
Also,
Astros.
see ya, Correa. Bye, Correa.
Well, that's the thing with that, right? Is that Pena looks a lot better on paper
Yeah.
compared to Correa, so
Yeah.
that kind of gets rid of a lot of the cheating, just kind of that look, that shine that they kind of had from quite a few seasons ago when they won in 2017. It kind of gets rid of that a little bit more. I think with that, it's not quite as overt as it once was, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
But are the Astros a dynasty? I think they.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'd
I think
say
they
so.
would be.
I'd agree. Yeah.
I mean,
And
they
they're gonna
have 2
continue.
championships. The Giants were a dynasty. Your
Yeah.
team, that was a dynasty, right?
Yeah.
The Astros, I think maybe borderline. You talk about like teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a dynasty of 1. But the Astros, now they have 2. Is it a dynasty? Have they dominated the league?
I
Maybe
would say
this year,
yes.
kind of. Maybe
Yeah.
in
I mean,
2017.
here's the
kind
thing:
of, 'cause they were cheating?
they've been in. I mean, within 4 appearances the past 6 years, they've won 2 of them. So, I mean, it's not like they haven't
They've
made
been
it.
good.
They've made it to the Fall Classic multiple times. You know what I mean? So even if we got to separate regular season from postseason baseball because it's almost like you're starting fresh once again.
That's
and
okay,
the Phillies
fair.
are a great example of that from this season, having made it as far as they did. And so, because that is very much a reality nowadays, I think the Astros are starting fresh every time they get into the postseason, as dominant as they've been. And so it's, I think it's all that more impressive that they've made it for the last 6 years into the Fall Classic with essentially starting fresh, like all the other teams that have made it in have as well. So, I'd say, because of that success, we talk a lot about kind of like the Seahawks as well, with what they were able to do, kind of like in 2013 Legion of Boom era and stuff like that. But it's like I'd say they are. They've had a lot of success in the past couple seasons they've had, and it's really shown in what they've done in the postseason. So
Yeah.
even if that success hasn't translated into a World Series win after a World Series win after a World Series win, they've been a consummate postseason specialist, basically.
They've been a force in the postseason.
They have indeed.
And unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. We are getting a little long here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Wazoo Sports Network, and be sure to subscribe to the Cable 8 YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Jason Chase, Andrew Fry, Alex Dorfler, and Ryan, remind me of his name again?
Lawson.
Signing out.